Hey there! Welcome to, here's what we're looking at today. It says Lesson 5. And we can tell by looking over here that we are looking at 5th grade and that this happens to be the first module in the Eureka curriculum. When we take a look over here, it says express as decimal numerals. So numerals are where you actually have regular numbers. Like here's regular numbers. These ones are words, but it's saying that it wants us in numbers that have decimals in them. So we have to include decimals. So let's look at the very first example they gave us. This one says 5 thousandths. So we know it's going to have a 5 in it, and we also know it's going to land in the thousandths place. So this is the thousandths place. What I'd like to do is show you kind of a bigger chart so you can see why that's true. So if we look over here, we can see that if you have a whole thousand, it's going to look like that. Hundreds, these are whole numbers. There's a whole one. Here's a decimal. This is, if it takes 10 to have a whole one, you only have one of them. So it's tenths. It's not a whole, it's just part of one. We can look over here and it's 1/100th. And then we have over on the end there, let me close this guy up. We have, oops, let me pull that back so you can see the whole thing actually. 1,000ths. So the one that we just had, do you remember? It said on there that we had a 5. Let's get a pencil. A pencil is needed. Pencil. There we go. And that we had a 5 over here, and what place value is it? It was in the thousandths place. And then we have a decimal right here. But that means that we have to think about what's in these ones. We know that we had no hundredths. We also had no tenths. See what that looks like. And let's see if it matches what they got. Sure enough. Now let's look at the next one. This one says 35 thousandths. Go back to where we were. 35 thousandths. So we know that we're going to have a 5 in the thousandths place again. But we know that it's actually 35 of them. But then in order to say, yeah, we didn't have any tenths at all, we put a 0 here. So this means 35. What's the last place value we're dealing with? Is thousandths. So because the 5 is in the thousandths place, that's the way we read it out loud. Let's look again at the next one. So what we just came up with for that one in our chart was a decimal, a 0, and then 35. And because the 5 was in the thousandths place, just like it is here, that makes it 35 thousandths. This one's getting bigger. It says 9 and 235 thousandths. 9 is just a whole number and represents your decimal. And then it said 235. So let's look over here. So if we have 235 and the 5 is again in the thousandths place, it told us that before the decimal, because it said and, we have a whole number. 9 and that much. So 9.235. Let's put it in over here. We have 9 and 235 thousandths. The other things that we're looking at today is the move from fractions like this to decimals. And these are kind of cool because when you read this out loud, you can make a decimal out of it. 8 thousandths is when you read a fraction out loud like that. So you know, here's the tenths place, the hundredths place, and we just figured out that's the thousandths place. The 8 is what goes in the thousandths place. How many thousandths do you have? You've got 8 of them. And we know, because there's nothing over here to the left of the 8, that we have no hundredths and we have no tenths. This one, we have an 8 in the thousandths place again. That matches So tenths place, hundredths place. 8 is in the thousandths place, but this time it's not just 8 thousandths, it's 28 of them, but no tenths. 28, what place value? Thousandths. Now this one gets bigger because we have a whole number. And remember, on that one up top there, we had 9 and then some more. So we know we have a whole number, and we have to go all the way to the thousandths according to that bottom right there. What do we have? We have 7 and 528 thousandths. Let's scroll down a little bit. This one says to express it in words. So we know this is a whole number. It is 15. And the decimal is represented with and. And then what do we have? We have IC 62, SIXTY-2. And what place value is that 2 sitting in? According to this right here, it's the thousandths place, so it is 62 thousandths. OUSAND THS. If it has THS on the end, you know you're in the decimals. That's a handy thing to remember. Now let's move on down a little bit. When we look at these, here's what's going on. Here we have 27. What place value is the 2 in? It's in the tens place. So what's happening? It's the same as 2 times 10. If we look at the 7, it's in the ones place. So it's the same as 7 times 1. We look at the next number, it happens to be in the tenths place. So it's the same as 3 times a tenth. 4 is in the hundredths, so it's the same as 4 times a hundredth. 6 is in the thousandths place, so it's the same as 6 times 1,000. That's one way to write it. Another way, if you look right here, it looks the same. 2 times 10, 7 times 1. Oh, but then it changes after the decimal. You could say 1/10 this way, or just like you read them out loud the same, you could say 1/10 that way. 1/100th, or you read it the same way, 1/100th. So when you multiply a whole number by that, what it does is it makes it so that it's a thumb change. Either you're gaining or losing place values. And in this case, you can tell by looking, it's going to lose 3 place values because it's going to go from the ones place to the tenths place to the hundredths place and land at the thousandths place. You can tell by looking. And then we look over here, and this one is going to have us do the same thing all on our own. It says that we need to put them in that place value chart. So I drew a place value chart on here. I just drew one. It's pretty easy. And now let's check it out. We can tell that 3 is after the decimal. So here's our decimal. And it's 362. And we know that the 2 is in the thousandths place, so the whole thing, when you read it out loud, will be 362 thousandths. If we were going to write this in the expanded form, here's our whole number. What are we multiplying by? We're multiplying by 1/10. And they put them in parentheses just so it's nice and neat. The next thing that we're doing is we're adding some more to that. And this time it's going to be a 6. But it's not going to be a whole 6. It's going to lose 2 place values. Because we're going to say times 100th. And what are we combining with that so that they're all working together? A 2, but we have to put it into its place value by saying it's going to land in the thousandths place. That's that. So, what I would like for you to do for tonight's homework is this one right up here. This one says express 9 thousandths as a decimal. So you're going to make 9 thousandths as a decimal number. But the next one that I'm asking you to do is to actually make a number as a fraction this time. And this one is going to be 29 thousandths, and it's going to be in fraction form. So you want to think about, if it's thousandths, what is the number that goes on the bottom? 1, 2, 3, 4. What goes down here? And then you have a 2-digit number up top. If it's 9 thousandths as a decimal, remember, here's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. What's your number going to look like? Write it all down, bring it in tomorrow with your name, date, and lesson number. Thanks.